Hello, and welcome to ChatDPS. Welcome to the new year. This is 12th of January 2026, and I'd like to welcome back Adam and Robert to the table. We're having a bit of a chat about all things security, governance, risk, compliance, and what's going on in the marketplace so that we can just sort of familiarize ourselves. We do want to say massive thank you for the support that we had during 2025 from everybody, customers, sort of like the people that tuned in to Chat DPS, the people that supported us behind the scenes, the distributors, the vendors. We had a fantastic year. It was a wonderful year to be alive and something that we're all very, very proud of, the work that we've been able to do and the people that we've been able to work with. So thank you. You've all made a massive part of that, and we're looking forward to that. With no further ado, there were some news stories over the Christmas and New Year period. One of which was that NextDC have been selected by NVIDIA. There's some kind of accreditation with this, Adam, right? So they're going to be taking billions of dollars into the Australian economy because of this deal. It's a regional play, I'm guessing.
Yeah, potentially. So they have been granted the NVIDIA DGX Ready data center, which basically means all of their next-gen AI chips and everything else are all going through there. So they'll have government clients, universities, and of course, they've got their large partners of international cloud providers that will all utilize that hardware to bring the next version of to Australians or the Australasian region, which will be very exciting.
Yeah, and Robert, there was another story from another part of the world that we noticed over the Christmas period, and that was that Airbus have decided that they're going to be investing in the European cloud rather than continuing their relationship with American clouds. Quite a significant play, isn't it?
Yeah, we've seen a few stories over the last 12 months, probably longer than that, where particularly the Europeans are investing heavily in sovereign data centers, moving away from ties to US-based data centers. Airbus, you can kind of understand because the main competitor is Boeing, of course. Given the volatile geopolitical environment, shall we say, without getting into too much detail, I guess trust is probably at its lowest ebb in terms of can you trust information that's being stored in US-based data centers and with US-based suppliers? And so it's really about taking control of your own destiny and taking control over your own IP and information. Yeah, an interesting move, but not surprising given the increase in geopolitical risk. So when we talk about GRC, this has got to be pretty high up the list at the moment. You've got to, as an organization, even if you're just based in Australia selling to other Australians, you've got to think about outside actors and the geopolitical situation and what does that mean for your business. So I think Airbus are doing exactly what they should be doing.
Yeah, an interesting aside, and there's much more obviously to that side of the story. It's more about systems as well as just the data centers. They're building new email platforms and systems behind the scenes that are going to enable people to be able to do go about doing their business. And as you say, it's trust built. I guess the first major story that we wanted to review backwards was the ACL story. Now, last year, this made big headlines, and there have been some fairly sort of significant consequences. So, Robert, back over to you on that one. I mean, this is quite a significant thing in the GRC world, right?
Yeah. So if we sort of do let's have a look back on 2025 and what does that mean for 2026? Yeah. For me, this was probably one of the biggest stories in that GRC. Privacy, cybersecurity space got the lawyers interested anyway. That's for sure. Lots of articles are written about that, and just to kind of summarize, so Australian Clinical Labs they purchased another clinical organization. I think they're called MedLab. And then maybe 3 months or so after that acquisition, this entity that they'd bought got breached. There was maybe some shortcomings in terms of what ACL did when they did their due diligence, what they did when they onboarded this particular entity and tried to incorporate it into its broader systems. And the upshot is that the OAIC penalised Australian Clinical Labs. I think it was around $6 million in total, roughly. But it was the first penalty under the Privacy Act for breaching privacy principles, but in relation to not having appropriate cybersecurity practices and controls in place. The key thing is that's a warning. That's a warning shot. So there's been a lot of regulator talk over the past 12 months and longer in terms of targeting organizations that don't have resilient cybersecurity practices. And now we're seeing action. We're seeing penalties, and this is a fairly significant penalty. Shortly after that, we saw Vinamofo, and that also fell foul of the OAIC. So to me, what it says is, okay, there's penalties coming through now. If you're not taking reasonable and appropriate steps given your organization when it comes to cybersecurity practices. So for 2026, you really should be really looking at this from a risk perspective. Okay, what do I need to do? So I've seen other organizations start to take financial hits now for not having their cybersecurity practices up to date. What should I be doing in 2026? So that's a key message for me.
So the CISO view on this, Adam, would be around, sort of like making sure you've got all of those buffers in place and, sort of compliance pieces of the jigsaw on the table. I mean, we've got consequences now, right? So, I mean, we're now looking at this and saying companies are looking at this and going, oh, hold on a minute. We are going to get fined if we don't actually do something about it, is the first point, right?
I would ask a couple of things. So one question I have for you, Robert, is the fines that went to the legal entity, have they issued any fines as of yet to the directors, the company directors, based off of, because last year came in that there was personal liability issues for company directors based off of these breaches. A common occurrence from a CISO perspective, if you know that there's going to be certain compliance issues, you budget for the fines. And that is a control that is out there that I don't personally believe in, but it is absolutely a thing. Where if the fix of the issue turns out to be of a higher monetary cost than the fine, you simply budget the fine. So I think the latter of that will help change people's minds on that control.
Yeah, so I'm not aware of them going after the directors as yet, but that doesn't mean that ASIC won't come along and look to follow up what the Office of the Information Commissioner has done. So that may still happen. The problem that we've seen is that in the past, the exploits of the directors have to be really egregious in terms of complete disdain for their duties under the Corporations Act in order for ASIC to be prepared to actually throw the book at them. So we haven't seen a lot of directors and officers cases being successfully brought for cybersecurity failures. And I guess just to add to that, we might see more of that under in the financial institution sector. So there's perhaps a little bit more leeway for ASIC to go after directors for APRA institutions. So we saw FIG Securities, and I think there was one other wealth management institution that ASIC is pursuing at the moment. So it's one of those things where I think it's a wait and see. But even if you were to take that kind of budgeting approach, depending on the size of the organization, you may have to increase your budget by $5 or $10 million. Which, in current circumstances is still going to be a bit of a pinch. And if you do have insurances, there may be some impact there as well. So, you need to weigh all of these things up. So, so clearly you can just take the hit. I wouldn't advocate taking the hit. And many organizations do not have the budget to do so. So it's better to be proactive.
100% agree with you.
Exactly.
100% agree with you. But from a CISO end, it's doing the basics, right? So you just be on top of risk, make sure that it's not a swear word in your organization, people understand it, and make sure that you're on top of your controls, whether they're compliance controls or not, and just be proactive in moving the bar to the right a little bit every day. And then you don't have to worry as much from that perspective. It's really difficult sometimes for a CISO to get this sway. There's another issue that isn't always talked about, which is where the CISO role hits. So if it's a technology role under a CIO, it's very difficult for the CISO to be able to get the necessary push in the business to make sure that risk is handled correctly.
Yeah. So that's a good point. I mean, where does the CISO sit in the organization, and sort of how much notice is paid to that, and how much volume is applied when they go into the boardroom? Yeah. So
and it's just optics, which is hilarious. So It's literally just optics. Some people will see under the CIO and go, "Oh, it's just tech. See you later." Where,
Yeah.
as the role itself might not actually be that, and might not be seen that from the CEO perspective or from the board perspective.
Yeah. It's interesting because obviously back in the day, and I think this is still the case now, where most bigger organizations have IT sitting under the CFO. It's, arguable. It's a debatable point. I like your point about basics, and I'd like to come back to that again in a short while. But the thing that's what the other big story from last year was around DNS and major cloud providers. I'd like you to because there could be some fairly significant fallout on that. And I mean, where do you think that's going to land?
Well, DNS being the
DNS.
problem child for everything. I mean, to put it into perspective, last year we lost all of the big services. So your Azure, your Google Clouds, AWS. We lost Zoom. We even had issues with the platform that we utilize. There was
Yeah.
issues for Ingram. So it was literally all of these huge systems throughout the globe that were affected by DNS issues. And the issue that we're having now is people are noticing that once you take away ownership of a thing, that you no longer have control of that thing. And this goes to a part of what we spoke about a bit earlier, where we're starting to see like Europe do sovereign capabilities in clouds. We're starting to see from a corporate perspective here in Australia that people are pulling away from the clouds and into their own data center again, for many, many reasons. And so I think there's going to be in 2026 a happy medium between clouds and on premises again.
Mhm.
And the ideas of cloud first and all that is kind of dying.
It's kind of an interesting point that you make because I remember 20 some years ago, I was, sort of like a manager at a fairly significant telco here in Australia, and the CIO actually sent out a report that he'd read, which he found quite interesting at the time, saying that just around the corner is the fact that the CIO is just going to be a warehouse manager. It's quite simply that's what they are going to be, and that kind of came to pass. But I think we've kind of gone back full circle around ourselves
Yeah.
now, and there's going to be a lot more, people hugging and what have you around that. They're going to be more data huggers and people like that are actually going to sort of like take the perspective of, I know zero trust is a little bit worn and ready, but I mean, it's, where do we stand on this and where do we go? Robert, have you got any thoughts around the DNS issues? I mean, do you see consequences that are rising out of that? Because I thought there was a massive trust issue that came out of it for me.
Yeah. So again, it comes back to risk, and I would hope that boards and other leaders of organizations will be looking at this game. Do we need to be all in with AWS or Azure or GCP or whatever it might be? What were the consequences for that, for those businesses when those services went down? Do we need to look at a more diversified strategy between different cloud providers, between cloud and on-prem, and having those risk debates within those organizations? So I think that's the key takeaway from me from a GRC perspective.
Yeah, so just circling back, thanks for that, because that's a really on point in terms of where we're going. So the one thing I think that we can all agree on is this going back to basics and actually understanding that you actually do have to have the big thing for me over the recent past has been the fact that people are sort of saying, oh well, we've got so many different requirements that are being thrust upon us. So state government have this, federal government have that. I work in an industry that's heavily regulated, and so therefore I've got to work to these particular standards. So, I mean, getting back to basics is going to be terribly important for organizations as we go through. So are there any words of advice you think that, from a CISO, from a GRC consultancy perspective, that you think, look, let's just sort of like use this as a starting point? Is that something that we can do? Adam, do you have any immediate thoughts?
100%. I think for everyone out there, whether you're a technology exec or an engineer, you work with technology in any way, it's time to literally strip back all of the layers of BS that we've built over the last few years and literally have a look at the very basic things. Are we making sure things are up to date? Are we making sure that we're double checking what we're doing to make sure that there's no security gaps? Just by doing those two things by themselves, throw in a little bit of like multi-factor into anytime you want to log into something so that people can't steal your password. Those basics, those very basic ideas reduce the amount of risk that you have by way more than any of the big ticket things that people talk about, right? So like basic monitoring, a good MDR solution, making sure that you have updates on everything or capable of updating everything. And then making sure that from a cultural perspective that everyone is able to speak about the things that aren't great so that they can become great. And if we just got back to basics from that end, I think this year would be a far better year than any other year that we've had
recently. Yeah. Robert?
Yeah, good points from Adam. I guess it's similar sort of things for me. I mean, when you sort of try and take a step back, there's been so much change in the law over the last couple of years, particularly in the Privacy Act. We've seen things like the Cybersecurity Act come into play now, mandatory ransomware reporting. We've seen the National AI Plan, and what does that all mean? We've seen the Online Safety Act changes and the so-called social media ban. There's so much happening, and I think the thing is, with it and everything that's been happening in terms of these major breaches and the regulatory fines, you can kind of go, well, where do I start? My head is swirling from so much stuff going on, and I think the key thing is, take a step back and kind of go, okay, what are the basics, and think about it. I sort of suggest think about it from just a framework perspective. Get some framework thinking going on within your business. What assets do I have? What are the things I need to protect? What's really important to me in my particular business? If something happens, how do I detect that incident? How do I respond to it? How do I recover from it? Do I have the right people, process, and technology? Am I doing the basics? As Adam mentioned, am I doing backups? Do I have multi-factor authentication? Do I have my applications patched and up to date? Those sorts of things. And then once you sort of think about it in terms of almost like a life cycle of management of cybersecurity and how that folds into your overall strategy for your business, then you can start to think about, well, do I need to pick a particular standard? Because I maybe my client's government, or maybe it's a large organization, do I need to have a standard like ISO 27000? Can I just put some controls in place? Can I put some basic controls in place like Essential 8 or something else, or sys controls or whatever it might be? So it's like, start with that kind of just, okay, as an organization, where are we going? What are the risks that we need to address? What are the business outcomes that we're looking to achieve? What data is important to us? And then work into the detail from there. But get those basics right. Get your people trained up. Get them all aware of what they need to do, because as we've mentioned many, many times, most of the issues that we see are actually people-led, unfortunately. So, focus on things like training and cultural awareness, and make sure you've got those basics in place, and then build up from there. Build your maturity up from there.
Align it with your values and make sure that you're clear about what your values are, and then take it on from there. Gentlemen,
I love the framework thinking idea.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the idea of like, take a scenario, take a thing. What's the risk if we do it badly? How do we do the thing?
How do we do the thing?
How do we do the thing? And look at it from those different angles. I think is the best takeaway that anyone can have from this conversation.
Great advice to start the year. Gentlemen, thank you. That was ChatDPS for this week. This is the first week back from leave for most people. I know that there have been some that have been put under the stump already, but thank you very much. Look forward to catching up with you soon.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you. Happy New Year.